Okay, it should be going on. It's still starting. Oh, Leah's coming in just as we start. We're starting right now, okay, just so you know. Good morning. I am higher vibrations, and so are you. And I think that part.
Was frozen for a minute. She'll be back. It's interesting because she was just talking about the power stuff.
She was too, yeah.
Did you see what happened in Melbourne? The big lights, the light show happening in the sky?
No. Tell us about it.
Yeah.
Am I back? Okay,
Yes.
good.
She's
That
back.
was weird. Excuse me, and thank you for being patient. That was on my end. It says your internet connection is unstable. I don't know why. The sky's blue and beautiful. Anyway, I was doing a disclaimer. It was what I was left doing. Is that I never, ever, ever go live with a group. This is planned ahead of time that we all knew in this meeting here that we were going to go live together. So this is a rare treat. Some of my closest friends are joining us today. I'm so excited to be a part of this conversation. We have a lot to discuss, and we're going to just kind of go around, and everybody's going to get a turn to talk. And some of the focus topics today we have highlighted is Tartaria, the Titanic, the reset, different things about time, different, it's like a conspiracy revealed kind of conversation today. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And I just want to introduce everybody. So maybe we'll go around and just introduce yourself if you like. First one to talk in the order would be Cara. So Cara, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, mate? Thanks for
Wonderful.
having me.
I'm so glad you came that you were able to join us today. Cara's been on the show before, as you guys know. You've probably seen her earlier. I'm just going to go around, not in any particular order, okay? Brian, thank you for joining us. You've never been on the show before. How are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Wonderful. I'm so happy to have you here. This is going to be fun.
Oh, yes, definitely.
And then we have Janette from Down Under also. Janette, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Mila. How are you?
I'm so good. And it's really fun to see the equal like how many people we're sharing the northern and the southern hemisphere today. It's really fun. I'm really
Yeah, they're
excited.
always fun chats that we have.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. Um, and Kirsty also from Down Under. Welcome, Kirsty. Good to see you. How are you?
Good, thanks.
And then someone else from Down Under. Leah has been on the show a couple of different times. I just love you. I'm so glad you're able to join today. How are you?
I'm awesome, thank you. How are you? Well, how
Oh,
are you all? It's been exciting. I'm
yeah.
nervous, but I'm excited. Yeah, I'm happy to see you all. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, this is gonna be a fun conversation.
Yeah.
So, oh, and Ralph says hi to everybody. Good to see you, Ralph. Ralph's in Scotland. Um, there's a bunch of stuff that we kind of wanted to cover today, and I thought that it might be useful to like just kind of have a chat for a little while, and then maybe I'll share a clip that kind of highlights some of these different examples. But so I'm just going to get started on something and then let anybody talk and jump in, but we kind of already talked about a little bit of an idea of everybody getting a chance to share, right? So but the Tartaria, I just want to talk about Tartaria. That's my thing right now. It's everywhere and it's inundating the every outlet that's moving through the stream for us. And I know that it sometimes can feel like an information overload. There's so much knowledge that's coming in right now. And when you start to dig and discover what Tartaria is all about, then it can consume you if you aren't careful because there's so many, 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 many things that are a part of that, and some of those things that I wanted to highlight in particular had to do with the time frame or the date that is suspected to be the window of time that really was like the Tartarian fall, which was around between the 1820s to the 1880s. Like there's a lot of stuff that happened, but in particular between the 1840s and 1880s. We have a lot of stuff about like for instance, I guess gotta grab this really fast because I just found this super fascinating, was that right at the same time as the Tartarian rule fell in 1888, at that same moment, all of a sudden, now there were all these crazy inventions that came out. All these like using magnet resistors for travel, motors based on magnets, and it's these different. I have it written here. I just need to find it. But where there's all of these incubator babies are popping up, and suddenly why everybody had electricity. And why is it that during this window of time it was like people behaved when they went to the beach as if they'd never been to the beach before? Like they went there in these houses that were pushed to the beach, the edges of the beaches, and then they would like be fully dressed, and there was this whole thing, and it's like as if they'd not been in nature before and been to the water before. There were so many strange things about this super hidden past of ours, and it all seems to fit around that same window of time. This was also a known time where the calendar changed. A lot of things about that. So that's me introducing that topic. There's a lot to cover, and if anyone wants to just chime in, I guess there doesn't really have to be an order, but just whatever you want to add, you're welcome to. Or I'll talk longer. I have a lot more to say.
I was just going to add, I feel like there was something around the water in Australia, like they were banned from swimming up until 19 something. There was something to do with Cara, am I right?
I was gonna. I actually had the same thought because I remember my mother, and my grandmother. It was illegal for women to swim up
Right.
until a certain date. So yeah, it was a big thing for my mum to learn how to swim, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, my dad grew up on the ocean and he doesn't know how to swim. He like grew literally a walking distance to the beach and he doesn't know how to swim.
Wow.
Neither did his mother, and she grew up there as well.
That's incredible because there's a lot of sailors that don't swim that work out there, and I'm like, don't swim.
Mm.
It's as if I didn't have exposure to it before. That's my take on it. Like there's all these underground tunnels and stuff. What are your thoughts?
Wasn't it my great grandmothers were found born at sea? Like found them in the ocean.
Wow.
Oh, that's a good point. Because yeah, they usually say born at sea, and what does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah, we assume that means that they're on a boat, but that
They're on a
doesn't.
ship. That's what I was going to say. We assume that they're on a ship.
Well, it depends where they are. Where on the boat? Are they connected to a land or a country, or are they out of international waters? Because that would affect, their whole birth and their whole astrology, and that would be a massive thing to be born at sea.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, no idea.
There's other parts about this too, where like there's a lot of symbolism behind birth and ships and how ships behave and like the birth canal, the we were talking just a little while ago, many of us were at that meeting we were talking about the champagne that was always broken against the bow or stern, or I don't know what side of boat. I don't know a lot about boats, but like it hit they would hit it just like you do a baby by the way, or they did do with a baby when they were born. They would, first thing that you want to make sure the baby has when they first are born is trauma. So they would smack them and then pretend that it had to do with them breathing, like they don't have to do that. But they would do the same thing with champagne, like amniotic fluid. Um, the there's other uh symbolism and names and words and stuff that all go along with birth and ships. And it's kind of interesting that it kind of went this way in conversation too, because we also recently linked that how close Titanic and Tartaria are aligned, and that there's a lot to do with that's another part that we already had on the plan to talk about today. But I just think that's really interesting that we already went to the water.
She wasn't birthed. Titanic was never christened, so that amniotic fluid wasn't broken.
Really?
Yeah, yes. So technically, she's still in the womb.
Oh,
Mm.
didn't you say too?
Right.
Sorry.
Yes, yes.
Didn't you also say that the time that they had drawn up the plans for the Titanic was around the same time as the other reset numbers that we have?
Yes. Brian has more detail on that, I think.
What were the other reset numbers you had? I think Titanic was well, they talked about it. I mean, started formulate making plans around 1907, at least from what we know, to build three ships. The Olympic, Titanic, and the third one was originally called the Gigantic, and was renamed to the Britannic. But in 1898, a man wrote a novel. I got to look up his name. He wrote a novel that talked about a ship, a huge passenger liner that on its maiden voyage in April struck an iceberg and sank in the North Atlantic with a huge loss of life. And the name of that ship was called the Titan. Yeah. And it was 14 years before the Titanic. And at least, I believe construction was like started in 1910. So that was 12 years before the ship was actually built.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you brought that up already, because that also links us once again right back into Tartaria, because Tartaria is Tartari or Tartary. I always struggle with that particular pronunciation. Tartarus, Taurus, and the Titans. Okay, so like the Tartarus is a name that we have long known was associated. It's also associated with oceans, interestingly enough. Is that there's some type of a cover or grate or cage where these titans are being kept. And the titans were long told to be like the enemy. And we're learning that a lot of these different symbols and stories were actually just, smear campaigns against them, right? And so bringing that to the point and topic here, this is something that just happened right before we got on the show. Actually, I discovered something. Okay, by the way, so then the leader, or the way that they show it in these different legends and stories that they tell, typically Disney related, so all kinds of different narratives thrown in there too, is that Hades, who is Pluto, by the way, who is known as the god of the underworld and often depicted as something that's like evil or sinister in some way, is actually the gatekeeper of inner earth. And what's fascinating is this just happened. They finally have admitted that there's a dwarf planet called Orcus. And Orcus also has a moon, just like Pluto. It's very similar to Pluto in a lot of different ways, especially in its choice and in their choice in its name. Because Orcus is actually the Roman word for Pluto. Pluto is Greek. And if you go through the translation of the different, and so they just went, oh, by the way, this just happened. This was like yesterday. And I just found out about it. And so the idea in these prophecies is that what occurs is that Pluto, who's now in Aquarius, which is the causation for us to be the time in the age of Aquarius, this alignment occurs, and then Pluto, who is the gatekeeper, opens the gates, and the Titans, which if you go through it and read it without any narrative, they're describing y'all. They're describing us. You know, if you take away the bad guy stuff that they put in stuff, you know it's not their own originally. So anyway, there's my 12 cents.
I was just going to say, and my understanding is that Saturn's moon's Titan. So that's another interesting correlation, because when you look into what you say about the moon, they're trying to say it's the binary of Earth. So
Right. Yeah, right. And moon is another way of saying moon, like you were just mentioning moon. And
yeah.
so it's exactly linked in there, you know, and so all of these things, that to me means that Mu was seen as a floating island, just like a moon might do.
Well, that's what I was thinking when everyone was talking about at sea. No one knew how to swim. It was, that type of thing. How that fits into, this actually being something that we're not told that it is. So
We are live, Joshua. Thank you for joining us.
Hey there.
Welcome. Right, we're just talking about Tartaria and Titanic right now, and Mu, and we've just moved into Mu, and it happens to be National or International or World Turtle Day. And Mu is known as a turtle island, right? So
I picked up a turtle and moved it off the road yesterday.
awesome.
I knew that was significant.
Yes. That's
Turtle
awesome.
Day.
As you were talking, Pamela, something kind of triggered in my mind to look something up while I was talking. It's interesting to know that what you had mentioned about Titanic, discussions about her being built started in 1907, and that was the same year that they started discussions about the Federal Reserve.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's touch that, because that's a good one. That's a lot of stuff. We know what? That we know 7 families are responsible for most decisions that happen globally, right? And that's not country, that's globally. Is that correct?
Mhm.
All right.
Mhm.
And in that, we find that there's before there was that 7 was a minority in this group. And the heads of family, the ones that were responsible for decision making regarding the Federal Reserve kind of concept, that were opposed to changing it to the Federal Reserve kind of concept, were all on the boat and all perished, according to reports. That was how they met their demise, and then suddenly the world changed. We had the depression, we had, the stock market break, fall, it had a lot of different things happen. And this is, exactly, that you can't, you can't make that up like that. There's no, I don't believe in any coincidences, but that one in particular,
Well,
like,
it also links up with the Great White Fleet, which I've mentioned only fleetingly, probably last week before, which was a group of ships that came out from the US, and they went from port to port, and that was from 1907 to 1909 or something like that. And people have like deep dived into that, and it looks like that was the beginning. And then you've got the fact that the company that built the Titanic was called the White Star. Is that right?
White Star.
Yeah. So we've got the Great White Fleet that came out and went from country to country. They came to Australia. I can't remember if it was 1907 or 1908. And that's what people that have looked into that That seems like the beginning of this Federal Reserve, like international Federal Reserve. It's not just your country, it's every country. We've got a Federal Reserve as well.
Right.
And what's this got to do with Saturn and Venus are aligned with the moon today,
Awesome.
23rd for you guys. And tomorrow it'll just be Venus aligned with the moon. And at sunrise, you'll see them in the sky side by side.
Well, Venus is Aphrodite, and the commonly we use the example of that as very feminine. That's like, you know, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Remember that the whole thing back in the. But then we also have Lilith, so that's a divine feminine, you know, dance that's happening because that's Lilith. You know, like there's the fact that we are so close to the wait, hold on. Where is it? Yeah, the new moon's on the 26th, so 3 days away from the new moon. So it's almost dark moon. You know, so you got a lot more of the dark Lilith kind of counterpart that's being balanced out. It makes a lot of sense to me because what we're doing right now is we're okay, let's just talk about it. Let's just have a conversation. Let's let it come out. You know, the window of time that we're talking about is considered the lost generation. And that was when the fall of Tartaria happened. You know, and should I share that clip that I told you guys I was going to share? Okay, I'm going to share a clip real quick. I didn't tell Joshua. Joshua, thank you for coming. You want to say something before I go into a clip?
No,
Okay.
I would like to see it.
All right. So this is something that I found on Facebook, but I made sure that it still had the sharing of, you know, like it says who it came from. Oh wait, did I grab the wrong one? Let me double check. I think this is the right one. No, this is right. It's got to be right. Okay. So, excuse me. I did click the wrong one. Okay, here we go. So let me share it. I had to make sure it was open. Okay, here we go. So this is not mine. This is from Emerald Stories.
Have you ever thought about why structures in Europe, Asia, and even America share the same distinctive features? Not forgetting that they also seem to be constructed with methods far too advanced for their supposed time periods. It raises the question, is our historical timeline accurate, or has it been completely fabricated to hide something? Or were they all built by the same architect? This is where it gets crazy. There was a colossal empire named Tartaria that was a highly advanced civilization with technology and knowledge far beyond even our current time. They have even been credited with the construction of the Great Wall of China. But it gets even more unsettling. What if the dates on these buildings are wrong? Imagine if that number one wasn't a one at all. Our history could be off by 1,000 years. The current timeline is a lie. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, they held events called World's Fairs to use as cover-ups to demolish our advanced past. Many recount that these structures were wiped out days after the events. This was evidence of a global civilization, a civilization whose roots could be traced all the way back to ancient Egypt.
Were you able to hear that?
Yes.
Audio?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
So this is one of many, 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 and there's a lot of people who are really, that's they do is they bring forward all this stuff about Tartaria and the fact that at that same window of time, that was during the World's Fairs. The World's Fairs happened between the 1880s and the 1950s or so. There were still a couple that happened after that, but I mean, the most of them were occurring during that particular window of time. This is also during the time that the Titanic fell. They would have these world fairs, everybody would come, and they always had electricity, by the way. That was something that was really fascinating. And every one of these structures all had the same thing that we'll see on government buildings all the time. Usually they're like, for a while there, they were like orphanages and hospitals and stuff too. But we're talking about chapels. We're talking about other places like other federal buildings like banks and different governmental places. you'll notice the White House has a lot of the same type of structure. These obelisks that are everywhere, they all have something in common, and that is that they have free energy sharing of capabilities. They always have this coil that looks kind of like what they call an insulator at the top of the electricity pole. They call it telephone poles, but I don't think anybody uses them for telephones anymore. But they all have this coil thing, and they all have the same typical kind of structure. Well, this is what's really fascinating to me, is that as things have shifted and moved, they've discovered that half of these buildings, most of them are underground, like mud flood style. That the front door you're going into is actually raised up. A lot of times you'll notice there's a dig down, and you'll have to go downstairs and then go back up. But it goes even deeper than that. And so that shows that some type of mud flood kind of thing happened during this time of reset, which makes it possible that people did maybe end up in tunnels or someplace for a little while, but the fact that these things are hidden in plain sight, and they're making such they put so much effort behind concealing them, and the technologies of these around the same time they started, and they would found. You notice the buildings are always founded. They're not built. And they always happen in such a short window of time. For instance, I'm going to say this and then let you guys talk. The example of the fairs, the World's Fairs, they always say how long it took to build it and how long it took before they demolished it. And it's always within this really short time frame. Super short time frame. It takes, at the same window of time, they built a bridge that took them 10 years to build a bridge, yet it took them 6 weeks to make this whole Colosseum thing, and like these massive megalithic statues made of gold and water fountains, and then you go up and you look at some of these buildings that still exist. There's like these marble pillars that are like wide, so wide you can barely wrap your arms around them, and they go up like 18 feet, and there's not just one of them. They're super heavy and precise and intricate, like tools we didn't have available at the time. Next to when they're building this, there's a shack, like in comparison, that was our capabilities with the hammer and all that stuff at that time. So there's obviously concealing that's been happening regarding this, and I really don't know exactly what it was, but I know it was called Tartaria, and there's evidence of it still all over. They didn't get rid of it. There's still proof of it in old maps and all kinds of stuff, and so what do you guys think? Is there anything you guys want to add to that?
I just
Well,
like
you
how they
see,
built all of these buildings when we were back in horse and cart as well, and transporting all the materials to where they needed to go to, and things like that. We couldn't do it in these days in the time frames that they're saying that they built these buildings and chapels and whatnot. We couldn't do it now. So
Exactly. Yeah.
you see that all the way back to Egypt and all
Yeah,
the way that, it's like the same story pretty much
with pyramids.
with the Great Pyramids and the statues and the obelisks, It may even have been the same race who was responsible for Tartaria, who was responsible for all these old world structures and civilizations as well.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, basically, the Egyptians were supposedly, based on the mainstream story, was that they were supposed to have no knowledge of the wheel or something like that. No knowledge of the wheel, primitive hand tools, and yet they were able to construct 700-ton obelisks out of hard stone that are like, symmetrical within like millimeters. It's like it's so you see this has been going on for thousands and thousands of years, and it's literally the same story. It's like they hide it right in plain sight, but there's all these mysteries that you really cannot wrap your head around based on what the conventional story is.
Right. Exactly. And the precision that is done in these sculptings, there's no possible way that hammer and chisel could do it. None. And in fact, I
Exactly.
just did the math, and it would take 15 years just to provide the materials for one of these basic structures that we say that they founded. If we used 300 horses, if we had that many horses, and the materials that we needed was only a mile away. Now, obviously, these materials weren't only a mile away, and who has 500 horses to build something?
Exactly. And many of those old sites also, they were quarrying stone from hundreds of miles away in some cases,
Uh-huh.
and they were transporting it to the site, and we're supposedly doing that without knowledge, with just basic methodology and basic tools. So it's like, it's just this kind of, if they were able to do that, I mean, they would have to be superhuman.
That's because we were superhuman and we're forgetting it. We're made of liquid gold, people. We're plasma.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's how they did it.
The time frames are just so skewed though, because you've got the red brick in 1888, right? And then you've got the rise of the gold rush, which was all wooden buildings. So they were tearing down the big trees to build all these wooden buildings. And in Australia, the wooden buildings are the ones that are National Trust.
Yeah.
So National Trust means you can't do anything to them. They're usually worth a lot of money, that type of thing. So you're restricted on what you can do with that building. However, it's wood. And then the next town over is also a gold rush town, and it's got all red brick, and wood, and so it's like they haven't even hidden it well enough within their founding timeframes.
Right.
Anyway, that well, they have, but it's a confusion. So therefore, that's hence the rise of the institutions to lock people up that went against the narrative because we're confused now. Can you imagine being the generation that was told that this is the new history?
Right. And just to add to that quickly, the California Gold Rush started January 24th, 1848. It fits right into that same time frame. The gold rush being send people ahead to what? Like
Well,
reclaim these
I
cities.
had family. My grandfather that's still alive, his great grandfather was born in California during the gold rush before they come out to Australia. So
Wow.
yeah, people were going via the US even before they came out here to do the gold rush stuff again.
Right.
So
Wow.
some of us have got big connections through the US, and then you just think, well, how did they get passage from? And so when you were talking before about boats and stuff and how they get places, it was all called passage. So was it just like an opening within a tunnel system, and they just walk their way through? I don't know. This is where my head goes when we say these words. But yeah, a lot of us have got connection through multiple countries. The other side of my family went via Canada. They went to Nova Scotia before they came out here. So people were going all over the place without, really the technology that we're told that they had at that time. So that's why we're all so confused because they've left little snippets, and then our families have also done family history, which you start looking into really, your story and stuff like that, and you start thinking, well, what was actually going on in the 18? I think my great 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 grandfather was born about 1845, 1850, somewhere like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's that time frame. That's
Wow.
that
Yeah.
window of time.
That's a lot of generations. Like my grandparents were born in 1889, 1898, 1903, and 1908.
Wow.
I can trace my dad's line back to 1775 and then it stops. I can't trace it any further back than that.
As you guys probably know, I traced mine to Odin. That's that whole conversation
Yeah.
with Elsa.
Yeah.
But like a lot of work was already done ahead for me when I got on the Swedish side of my family line. It was like and it was like there's all this royalty and stuff, so it was already done. But like, I'm not saying that that's true or not true, but it's fun. Cara, were you going to talk? It seems like you have something.
Oh, you guys always give me codes when you talk. There's been writing it all down. You mentioned Tartaria and like the gold rush and the iron. The visions I was getting, like when talking about like the buildings that they built, where they fell, and like the energy of how they used to operate, I could just see like this crystal, and it looked like it had like this vibrating. It was like gold, but it was also iron. There's something to that red, just sound like there's something to that red iron to Stargate.
I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Your volume going, Carol.
Yeah, you're good now.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just about the energy. You said about the World's Fair and about Tartaria and about the ocean and the Tartarus. And I just had like a vision of like the junk DNA, and like you said, like the Titans were in like a cage under the water, and it just gave me a vision of like how like that was like the time when our junk DNA was also, cut. We didn't know about the wheel, all that sort of stuff. And with the you said about that time with the gold rush, it just seemed really connected to like the Titanic, and how there was like a rush to get all the gold. It's like they knew monopoly was coming into play.
Yeah.
We'd have our census taken, and then here comes the monopoly money. So let's have a gold rush to get the control on the actual gold at that time. So maybe that's what falling,
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't very
And
long
during
after that they did it. Go ahead, Joshua. Excuse me.
and during the Great Depression, which wasn't too much after that I mean, it was a little bit of time after the gold rush, but basically, wasn't it with the Great Depression that they pretty much abolished the gold standard, and
Yeah,
that's why all money is pretty much speculative now, has no physical backing because of that.
exactly. Exactly. It was the beginning of the big scam, getting you to give them your gold for pieces of paper that Tom Sawyer said, I mean, the government said that it's money.
Yeah, pretty
Right?
much, because it used to have value, or so we were taught to believe.
Right.
Yeah, now it's been proven it's just a promissory note, isn't it? It's just a promise of a value that anyone can put on that piece of paper.
Right. Right. And at the same time, they're taking away everything that we need to survive and have thriving lives, then requiring payment for them. Like, this induction motor thing I was talking about earlier that Nikola Tesla's given responsibility for inventing. He did that in 1888 during this reset. It happened on the 1st of May. It was almost exactly now. But it was in 1888. And this is what's happening now. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but your local area, it's summertime, so they're pulling up the streets, right? That's what they do. And because they have to repay them every year, guess why they need to repay them every year? There's plates all the way underneath all of these. Some of them are rails, some of these cool, like they look like a cookie cutter, but it's over the same one over, and it's about that thick. It's just underneath the blacktop. This is what you need for an induction motor to work. It's a magnet motioned vehicle that you see all these and hear all these and read all these accounts for as well. In the day, they had hovercrafts. That's how they got around. We're on hovercrafts. And it sounded so out there and George Jetson that no one believed it. But now they're like, think about it. How many towns, roads have you seen that has like this bar of metal poking up? That would have been for the like train. That's all it needed to be suspended off of the ground. You didn't need crude oil, which by the way, oil is not inexhaustible, or it's an inexhaustible resource, excuse me, on purpose to be needing us to want to have to pay for our energy. Electricity was free before. You wouldn't pay to have to be in your own planet, to live in a house in your own planet, and it's all about that. It's all only happened over the past like 100 years or so. It's
Even
crazy.
air travel was free on Zeppelins. They used
Yeah.
to dock them on the top of the spires on the old buildings and things like that. They were all
Right.
free, but also see that Tartaria is connected to Tara as the planet's raising its vibration. Everything's opening up to us. We've like met Tara, but as like Cara, sorry, Tara and Cara. As Cara was talking, she mentioned junk DNA. Yeah, dude, when we hit Earth, we've come down out of Tartaria, Tara, we've hit Earth, chunk, in comes the junk DNA. Yeah, for sure. But Gaia comes before Tara. I can see it's like one, then Gaia, because Gaia's a primordial. So before Tara, and then there's Earth. So we're backing it back up again. But Kirsty, when you said about the womb, I've been thinking about what what we were talking about before my phone cut out on Thursday. And you were like, what can you see down there? What colors? And I could see magenta. Right. I'm like, okay, but while we're down there, I said I could see like this energetic doodad, right? And it was a membrane. And I'm like, okay, so where's that connected to? Is that like the 12th or the 15th? What am I seeing? And do you know what? I actually saw it was coming from the 18th or something to the 15th. And then the 15th down to the 12th. So there is some kind of protection layer there, dude. But Percy, that's right, the womb. And it has got something to do with the womb. When you said that, I went, oh, that's that membrane that I can actually see. But then there is something above also protecting it. And there was something else. Can't remember. Oh, so you know why there was dragon's blood on the Titanic? Did anybody come up with that the other day? Sorry, that was a question and it's just been in my head now because Vale was looking it up.
Significant amount
So,
of that.
sorry.
Varley was telling us about it. Several. Kirsty, you know a little bit about it, about the bush or whatever it came.
Yeah, it's from like a Dracaena plant. And Dracaena are like a very, like a succulent type plant.
Okay.
And it's obviously a dried resin from the plant that they use to dye things. It's a red resin.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
I need to bring it back around to anyone that, because we've talked about this a lot. We've several of us have talked about the Titanic, and I've seen like the northern lights down there. Like the ship can generate its own northern lights, and like the whole ocean flora. Have no idea how it can do this, but Kirsty saw the same thing. Leah looked down there, and that's what she's talking about with the colors. There seems to be some kind of consciousness down there protecting. It's either the ship or a collective consciousness protecting the ship. But it's why you can only see little bits and pieces of the ship when they go down there with their lights and subs and stuff like that. And why she stayed hidden for almost 7 decades before they found her. It's like, I feel lately she's got some big secret she's about to reveal. I've always had this strong connection with the ship, and she's been chatty lately, So we've talked in so many different circles about it, about what she means or what she's, even the connection. I mean, last week we talked about what was a connection to Australia, and then literally the next night I watched where these subs called Romeo and Juliet ironically went down and photographed every square inch of the ship, every square inch of the debris field, and allows us to see everything at one time. And the question came up, well, are the images we're seeing real or are they doctored? And I had goosebumps the entire time I watched, so I know I was looking at the real ship. But it had to do with there was a pocket watch found in the debris field that had an advanced Australian crest in it. Then we found our connection to Australia. Man, named John Weir that had family in America. He was from the UK, and he had family in Australia too. It's just amazing the links and stuff we're finding, all big puzzle pieces for something.
And that
And
I have Lake Tiffany were the gold, the ones that transported, remember, the gold from Australia to the US before the Titanic was built. So they were already using that fleet to transport gold from around the world. Sorry, Kirsty, you go.
no, right.
I just
Keep
have
going.
something more to add because in the audience we have Varley who's answering the question.
Mhm.
She says that yes, dragon's blood was used for the floor varnish, etc. Though dragon's blood was the largest cargo haul on the item on the Titanic's manifest. So it's kind of a interesting thing. Go ahead.
You go, Bert.
Who's
Who?
the
I don't know who was next. Who was going to talk?
I cut
Well,
Kirsty
listen,
off about the
I will
gold. So
say
yeah.
about the Titanic. I see the Titanic, like I said to you, Brian, it's a multi-dimensional ship.
Yes.
It wasn't birthed in this reality. There's a remnant of it in this reality. But as we move up dimensions, so does she.
Yes. She's an anchor point in the timeline. You
That's
feel
right.
before she sank and after she sank, there's a split, there's a break. Just like you said, Pamela, everything changed after she went down. And the link back to Tartaria is the fact that she was, at the time, the most advanced, technologically advanced ship sailing, the largest, most luxurious, technologically advanced. She recycled her own steam, to drive her engines. And the repetition of the number three, she had 3 anchors, 3 working funnels. She had 4 funnels, only 3 worked, 3 propellers. There was one of 3 sister ships. There was this constant repetition of the 3. And so
She's like the Tower of Babel. She's like the split of language. She's everything. She represents it all, even the split of the timelines. Okay,
yes,
they divide us into half. We've got our dark side timeline and our light side timeline.
Was
Then
it
they can
was it
scoop little timelines off the side and break holes in the timeline and create whole new versions of time outside the 2 initial realities. And until we can face our shadows and bring ourselves back together into that one timeline, we cannot see the rest of them.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it all fits to a lot of different. This is also, by the way, so this was the same window of time between so the greatest generation is what the generation is called. But they're from 1901 to 1927. This generation is largely connected to the orphan trains and the Cabbage Patch Kids story. So this was all happening at the same time, is what I'm saying, and what I'm kind of shifting topics. Do you guys want to talk about the Titanic aspects a little bit more before I jump so far?
So I was going to mention the thing that linked back to Tartaria was that when I started looking at this stuff, I got the clear message after something was revealed to me that the Titanic's design is not human design. It was channeled.
Yeah.
So it's not a human design. She was created for a specific purpose. We know what happened on board, but whatever is being or going to be revealed, she was engineered for a specific purpose. And I think that's what is coming around again, which I think you had mentioned, everything kind of looping back again. Is that purpose is about to be revealed.
Yeah. And it's linked to we're not allowed to touch it, right? Isn't there some weird, you're not more than any other shipwrecks, the Titanic is like, you don't touch the Titanic, you can't mess with it, evidence of any kind.
Yeah, they're hoping that with this new digital twin they've created from all the photographs that they want to go down there, because there is this taboo thing about visiting the ship. I mean, people do it, stuff has been taken from the debris field, that kind of stuff. But yeah, it is kind of. And then when the sub incident happened, which was also named the Titan a couple of years ago, they kind of discontinued any further, visits to the ship for a while after that.
Right.
So, right.
Whenever there's something like that, to me, that's like the no-no line. We had a no-no line when I was little. We had an unfinished basement and all the stuff that was not like from this kitchen or bathroom that never got put together. She just put up a piece of tape or a string and wrote no on these pieces of paper and hung them. And that's what that means to me, is like they just don't want you to touch it because they don't want you to find out. Like that's what these no lines are for.
One other thing I was going to mention too, while you're bringing it up, the documentary, which anybody can watch, new documentary with photos, is that when the ship sank, they talked about, like in Cameron's film, how it just split apart, broke apart. Well, they found evidence looking at these photographs that when she split apart, she just split apart. 20% of the ship was obliterated, and the guy that looked at the wreckage said it almost looked like a missile had hit it. You know, so that brings up even more questions. But I was going to say as we were talking, certain things kind of came through. I looked up the Industrial Revolution, and the second Industrial Revolution started in 1870. You guys still hear me?
Yeah, I'm just reading Elsa's comment on you about you.
That's okay. The second Industrial Revolution started in 1870, ended in 1914. And this month, May, has some interesting things too, because Titanic was launched. Engines and interior haven't been installed on May 31st, 1911. And then when we talked about the canals, the Panama Canal came up in my mind for some reason. I looked that up. May 4th, 1904 is when construction began on that one. So it's like, yeah. There's some kind of connection, but I'm just kind of throwing out there the things that come through for whatever they mean.
There's a lot to it. There's so many layers and so many. I mean, we could seriously talk for. Oh, we lost somebody. Cara, she'll be back. We could talk for days and still not uncover all of it, you know. And the point here is there's definite links to all of it. Like it's all connected, you know. And it's almost impossible to talk about one of these 5 topics without talking about the others, because they're so intertwined, right? Like Joshua's point about how it's connected to ancient Egypt. And then that brings you to show all of this, the links of ancient Egypt to other continents that aren't Egyptian, like the Americas, like Australia, like, you know, Tibet, for instance. That's one of my favorite places. That's a really cool place with so many pyramids. And like, they're everywhere. There's over 600,000 pyramids on this planet. Most of them are underwater or under some type of cloak, like vegetation, or they've buried it. They're calling it a mountain or whatever, but it's all linked. And you know, the earlier depictions that they're showing now are these examples and writings and stuff, firsthand reports of people who had seen these people that were giant in size, larger than us, about 17 feet to 25 feet. And these individuals were nice. They're good people. There wasn't anything scary about them. And somehow they were able to move rocks without touching them. And then they called it melting the rocks so they would fit in the corners. But I don't know if melting was really what they were doing. That's just the way that the people could translate what was happening, because it would become pliable. If you look at some of these structures that the Panama Canal is connected to this, that's why that came up, is they were trying to hide some stuff in the Panama area, and that has a lot to do with that. And so, but you'll look at, even in the Panama area, you'll see these structures. You can't put a piece of paper between them. These stones. We're talking about all over the world, all over the world. Sometimes it's next to your 7-Eleven. Like, it's crazy how some of these things are just hidden in the backyard of some people's houses. Like, you know, so it's real. It's there. It's something that's been hiding in plain sight this whole time. Why haven't we noticed it before? That's my question. Because it seems.
I think we have.
I was going to say that
Subconsciously.
maybe the cloak in history that, you know, we're talking about as we're trying to put all these pieces together about how this stuff doesn't make sense, was the cloak and why we haven't noticed those things before, you know. Maybe had something to do with that. I don't know.
Right. So you wonder if all of the pyramids are connected through the tunnel system, right? So obviously it was tunneled out, and then they got people to come and dig up the ground for the gold rush. So you just wonder how that correlates with each other so that you can hide the passage from, you know, civilization to civilization, that it actually wasn't at sea. That's why no one could swim, all of the, so yeah, that's where my head went when you were talking pyramids. I'm like,
What were
yeah,
I mean, built equidistant from one another in a certain pattern on some kind of energy lines or something like that? Could those be communication lines connected to the other structures?
Oh, sure. I mean,
if you're using plasma, that's electro, magnetic. So we don't know how they've built these structures. We're electromagnetic at the end of the day. So there's nothing to say that that wasn't the technology that was being used. It's just that we don't know how to use it. I feel like we get our electromagnetic field harness for someone else's gain. And maybe that's what, we did have an understanding of how to use it, the consciousness back then, and now someone else has got the ability to use our consciousness, and that's why we can't see it, because it's cloaking our reality just through the fact that someone's hijacking our electromagnetic field.
right.
That's just food for thought.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, and I'm sure all of us here and everybody in the audience have had experiences throughout your life where you're the one going, what? Like it just that doesn't fit. You can just blindly accept that. I can't count how many times I was in the principal's office for doing that in class. Like it's obvious that you're lying. You may not know that you're lying, but you are. You're lying someone else's lie, it's still a lie. But if you can get past that and let yourself look, we've also raised, though, this is something else that's happened. I've just noticed over the past 5 years, really starting about 2017, if you go all the way through. But we're just, it's as if us raising our vibration is making it so we can vibrate high enough to see these higher vibrational in their most balanced way. But that's more of a global or collective situation. Most of us have already known. Like, some of the conversations that we've had in our minds, we're only just really starting to have out loud. So it's just kind of fun to share. I know that Joshua was trying to share a minute ago. Did you want to get a chance to speak up, everybody?
Uh, I don't remember what I was going to say if I was. So
I'm sorry.
yeah, I do. Talking about the pyramids is very interesting because they are connected by there's evidence that they are connected to the atmosphere, so they're pretty much wireless, sending wireless signals all across the world. And so I think all these pyramids that were created by this master race or these master whatever they are, they were pretty much made to be wireless transmitters and to be able to send some kind of energy, probably harness energy or maybe to receive energy back to Earth. And coming back to those also how they were building these things, like you were saying, how um, melting stone and using it seems like they were doing something with like I don't know if it's like sound frequency, could be like that electromagnetic kind of harnessing that energy. But you can see it like at Machu Picchu, you see it at some of the quarries around the Plateau of Giza, where you see the giant scoop marks in the rock. So it's they didn't carve it out that way because it clearly has this sense of like the rock had been liquefied almost and it was turning into like some kind of in between material, not quite solid rock but not quite liquid. So I think you can pretty much do anything if you have the right frequency.
Yeah.
So externally, internally, the whole world is pretty much a form of alchemy in some way or another. The whole reality that we experience is far more malleable and liquid than we think. And I think some of the things that they were doing, maybe they were doing them interdimensionally, like they were affecting things on like a higher dimension than which would then create very effortless effects down in this three-dimensional reality because they're already doing things. It's like you're going behind the code of the program and messing with things and then seeing the effect in the physical world. Like you can't affect certain change as a character in a video game, but if you were the programmer, you could do things very easily, and it would move outside of space and time, and it would. So I think that's what's happening, and to some extent, like also with the Titanic being some kind of anchor point. You know, like what we perceive as a mechanical ship moving across the water doing something like that could be like a living symbol for something that they're doing interdimensionally, and then we see the effect of it sinking, and it could just I have no idea what how deep it really goes, you know, like into the quantum level. Like why is it that could that whole experience, that whole event be some kind of like an after image of
Yeah.
something that they did in the spiritual world, that they did something on a higher dimension or in a different reality. And then that has this effect that we perceive from our limited understanding. Oh, a ship happened, this thing happened, but like what was the energy moving through there? Like what did that symbolize? If this whole if this whole life is some sort of dream or simulation or something, like what are we really seeing when
Right.
these things happen? What is really going on there? So
Right. I mean, it's very good to point those things out because, I mean, and they use the words like gods. Um, uh, Elohim meant a plural word of many from the stars, you know, like several people coming from the stars. And the Elohim word has been used to associate with what we call God, you know, and um, there's a lot of variations throughout this too. So it's like if you can figure out who they're actually talking about, it helps. Because then there's also like creator, universe, energy source, that's different. But what's really interesting too is this is something that this is a rabbit hole I just recently jumped down on accident, is the melting of things. There's like all around different areas that I've been at, I've seen this, and it's like what it is, it's like the side of these, I don't know what you call those. I would call it a canyon, but it's like the road is like a really tall, steep hill next to you, and it's all like vegetation or whatever, rocks. And you look at it and you see it's actually bricks, and they're melted. Like these bricks are, and they're old, they're not that old because they have like a stamp on it with someone's name. Like someone, a company made these bricks and they've been melted. Like, you know how freaking hot you gotta get to melt bricks that look like liquid? It looks like wax, the way that it's melted. And you'll look around, you'll see a lot of these ruins that are like this, and you wonder to yourself, would they be ruins if they weren't melted? Is this another using the technology that we've just rediscovered or stole or they stole or however that worked out, borrowed from the Tartarians or whoever it was in order to eliminate the proof of the Tartarians even being here? You know, like there's been a lot of things that have been done like that. So I wouldn't put it past them. Like they say that the Wall of China is the Wall of China when it's actually in the wrong direction. It's facing the province of China, trying to, which is designed in the way to keep the people from that part of the world out. All of their towers and stuff are all pointed towards China. The longest part of the wall is pointed towards China. You can just climb up to the wall from the other side really easy. But they've been trying to tell us that the wall of China was keeping out the Genghis Khan. When I've just found recent evidence that they're saying that Genghis Khan was a Tartarian, royalty of some type. So it makes you
well, he
wonder
did
what
rule.
stories did they tell us about him that are true or not?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. He did rule a large portion of the world for a time,
Right,
and it's quite amazing to think that him and the Mongols were able to do that. Maybe they already had control of it. Maybe it was given to them. Maybe, you know, could
right.
be a different story over there.
Be something entirely different. I find that it seems that the people from Tartaria seem to be at least descendants from who were Atlanteans and Lemurians. And
That makes sense.
the genetic line that comes from that typically have a lot of like this indigenous look, like so like Native Americans and go to each country. I don't know everybody's words, you know what I mean? But like you'll see it in like Hawaii, you'll see the same type of, and this is not judgment or anything against anybody. It's this beautiful almond eye, like typically they'll be like a bit darker complexion, kind of look. And that's what these Mongols also they carried a lot of the same characteristics. They very likely could have been genetically directly linked to these Tartarians that had fallen.
I think we can look at also, we've talked about how we're not sure about how accurate history is. To start looking at the structures, the buildings, the ships, all this stuff for the story itself. The Titanic told a bigger story than what we've been told. I mean, even now, Josh brings up a great point about history. The Titanic was headed from west to east. Then why is the ship itself where it's laying now point north south? And
Yeah.
and completely equidistant between the North Pole and the equator. How is that possible? But the other thing that came up while we were talking was the use of copper. Titanic was more than 25% copper. The Statue of Liberty, it's a large amount of copper. They're talking a copper, they label it copper contamination near the Giza pyramids. How can it be contaminated? So the use of copper in communications, but it just kind of leads, where is the copper play into all of this? Because it seems like each significant event has some high level of copper.
Yeah.
In this, I don't know. As we're talking, it just kind of leads to one thing after that. As I'm looking up how much copper was used in the pyramids or found in or around the pyramids and building the pyramids and stuff like that, and how much it's involved in so many other key things. It's just kind of interesting.
Right. And then it's not surprising that they took copper out of our pennies.
Mm.
Like the precious metals that were the coins. Why the coins in the old days? I went back to a previous incarnation or Akashic, I'm not sure. And I found something out that I never really considered before, and I just love this piece of knowledge, is that the coins that were used back then weren't always used just like we use coins today. People use digital money mostly now, but instead it would be a way to show how much it weighed, like a gold bar would. And when it was time to buy something, you wouldn't give them a whole freaking piece of gold. You'd buy the chunk off of it. And then they'd weigh off what they needed. But that part of that, I had this whole experience. That was the memory I kept out of that whole experience. And I told everybody about that part because that's like, I never thought of that's why there aren't very many coins to find anymore. Is they didn't really use the coins to keep like we do now. So but then they took all precious metals and everything out. And I don't even know what most of these coins that we use are even made out of anymore. They're a lot lighter. That's obvious.
Do you remember that push a few years ago where people were going into homes, stripping out the copper from electrical wires and the big?
Yeah.
You remember that too? It was
Yeah.
all a big grab to get people to get their hands on copper.
Right. Right. And, that's been recently linked to aging, lack of copper. If you have copper, a good enough amount of copper in your body, I did some research and the answer was that beef liver is the answer, and my answer about that is no. But if that's your thing, go for it. But it apparently you won't have your hair won't gray, your body doesn't age the same way. It's a lot slower process if you have the proper quantity of copper. Copper slowly leaves your system, and so the stores of copper that many of us have been using up were from birth. A lot of these minerals that we're finding we're missing, we've just slowly been depleting over time.
I just was thinking about how we've talked about the Titanic with the wireless and, the fact that the electromagnetic, that's what we are. So it's interesting that you say the boat's moved as well. So where's that pull come from for it to move, or was it always like that? Or, so it's like as we, become more in tune with ourselves, we do pick up on these messages. So whether or not, we are getting more copper in our diet, or, we're wearing copper or whatnot. There is definitely something in that, because we know they've taken a lot of copper out of the homes, or the new homes they build, they don't put copper in there at all anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely a frequency band that is used to move, data information very quickly. We know about the fiber optics when it comes to, technology for the internet. That is the fastest, well, that's what they tell us is the fastest way to move the communication around. And again, we've talked about in our group, the Aussie Zoom, about the submarine cables, because I did have one off the coast here where I live, that was put in around 1888, and it was put in from here out to New Caledonia up to Vancouver in Canada. So that was the trajectory of that. And then early 1900s, I can't remember exactly the date, but it was similar to the Titanic date. It might have even been a little bit later. They started routing it through Sydney, which would make more sense because it's a capital city. I'm in a regional area in the middle of nowhere. So you just wonder why the cable was coming through this particular area, and from North America as well, So I haven't quite unpacked it all, but we are aware that all these cables are in the ocean. Yes, the satellites do what they do. I haven't quite worked that out yet, exactly what is going on up there, if that's just another overlay to impair us to a point of not being able to connect with ourselves.
Babble.
Yeah, another babble, yeah, like another hit of frequencies to scatter, but yeah, the ocean obviously is a big way of moving data or information communication very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, we know that as channels. All of us are channels, like we know that when you interact with water, things are more spirit works. It's spirit conducts through it really easily. And this has been the first time that they laid these originally was, guess what? During the 1880s.
Yeah, probably 1888.
Yeah, it was 1886 when they started, and it only took them 2 years to complete. And they completed it in 1888 or thereabout. I remember there being a big thing about that, because for the longest time, no one would believe it, because back then, for them to complete such an undertaking in such a short amount of time, world communication, all placed under the ocean, for them to complete it in such a short amount of time, no one believed it. And we believe the satellites are doing something. I'm not sure what they're doing apart from surveillance, like you said, but there's something else about copper too. Copper's like, it's antibacterial. All cookware used to be copper. All pipes in all houses were copper. I remember when they started to do the smear campaign on it and be like, oh, you got copper pipes. Oh, you can get sick. We better hurry and change those to plastic. PVC pipes, boom. Like, that's like not a good idea. Water, it aligns your water, copper does. So like drinking from a copper cup, drinking from a copper cup, or using like a copper water pitcher. There's a whole line of them. By the way, this is just for those of you who are like me and you're thrifters, rather than buying like things online or whatever. I'll go bring a magnet with you, because the fakes, copper is not magnetic. And a lot of times you'll have like a metal like pitcher or whatever, and they'll put copper on the outside. And it shouldn't, if it connects to it, the magnet, it's not copper, just so you know. But it's really helpful. There's a lot of science behind this. Electroculture, I'm not, as you all, a bunch of you have been doing it recently. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I've been doing electroculture for probably about 2 years now. I've had some really good success with fruit and obviously vegetables as well. It harnesses the free energy. You can do it in a whole different range of ways. I've just got antennas all throughout my garden next to trees. Literally just copper wound around either sticks out of the yard or I'll go and just buy, your pine, generally treated pine, stakes that you put in your garden to hold up your vegetables and stuff like that. So I have found that it does work really. It's like it produces quick growth because it does harness the free energy. And I wear copper, but I find that in the backyard too that we can be sprayed and then it will clear quite quickly as well when you do certain things with the copper and water. So
Elsa
it's
just
nice.
said that. She says copper sulfate in blue is blue in powder mineral blueprint carrier.
Hmm.
Blueprint.
Sorry, I thought that would that resonated with. There's a lot to it. It's crazy. If you guys get a chance, by the way, afterwards, there's a lot of comments that I've not been able to read, or post, I mean, so everybody can see it. But and then using this, you can see that the insects don't come to the what you're growing. Your food grows bigger. It's like, I mean, the difference between a regular rutabaga and what looks like a banana plant with those big old leaves, like it's crazy. So all I did is I just put like a copper wire bracelet in a pot just to see what would happen. It took over my kitchen. Like this plant it's still growing. I ended up stringing up all kinds of like, you know, yarn on the ceiling so it can crawl, like, but it was just because I put copper in it. Like the other one next to it's right next to it. There's nothing different, same everything. And the other one's just kind of like, it's doing okay. Not like that. And so what happens when you do that for yourself? What happens when I don't remember how long it's supposed to be, but there's a time to consider that, how long it's supposed to be, your water should be in the copper before it's done something for it. But I have a friend that uses a copper hose nozzle, and the water goes through there pretty quickly. And just doing that and no electroculture has improved night and day their garden, including their lawn. Like their lawn is like they're complaining about it. They have to mow their lawn twice as often as everybody else.
And then you think, I was just going to say, well, most of us would have grown up with copper on the hose, wouldn't we?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We drank from the hose. We're that generation.
Copper top. Yeah. The boiling hot copper top. Yeah.
Yeah, I was one of those that also drank from the hose. Never got sick from it though. I was going to mention something about the copper. I've seen photos of people who do the electroculture, and it's like you think because of GMO and what it does to food, the plants and stuff like that, but it's not. It's not GMO. These people are actually using the wire on the sticks and the some of these are the crystals too, and they're just I mean they're like 2 or 3 times the size of what a normal plant or normal watermelon or anything that they plant would look like. It's pretty funky. And a good friend of mine actually sent me she made some copper, like with some sticks and copper wiring with like crystal, like clear quartz crystal on it. Sorry, I haven't had time haven't been able to put them in my yard or anything like that. I will get there. But yeah, it's just very cool. Just the idea of it is amazing. The other thing I want to mention that's not really part of gardening, but that with the copper cup that I have, also thanks to a good friend of mine, and I have a copper straw. So when I put water in there, not from the faucet, but it's just like I stir it, to make that funnel. And I notice just a slight difference because the water gets more structured.
Yeah. Ooh, And Elsa says that copper is Cu. Yeah, like connecting it to crystals does so much. I have earrings like that. That's what I'm actually wearing right now. These are copper, and this is wrapped around little quartz crystals. And like it changes things. Like I'll put these in. That's why you see me wearing them so often, if anybody ever notices. But connecting it to that's what the inside of your phone looks like, right? It's got quartz crystals usually, these types of things. They have copper and they're coiled in a certain way. Um, so this is something else too, is the direction that you're coiling it. Just I don't want to forget to say that. And then I'm sure somebody else wants to talk about something too. Just remember, look up the direction. I've always been taught it's always like counterclockwise, anti-clockwise. Is the direction that you spin it, but it depends on what you're doing too. I've seen people who make these like coins, basically, that the center you start it one way and then you do it different, then you go so I suggest that if you're going to do this, to look it up. I found out how different it feels because I bought somebody's stuff. I was in this crystal shop and I was like, oh, grab, that looks pretty. But I didn't really notice myself, but I later on looking back realized it. It felt uncomfortable. It wasn't, and I just thought it was the being in the store or something. When I came back in again, I made a comment and the lady's like, yeah, she winds them the wrong direction. Everybody complains about it. Like you can feel it. And I was like,
So
well,
you do bring up a good point, because the Southern Hemisphere and Northern Hemisphere, they do talk about winding it a different way. We wind it, I believe, anti-clockwise in Australia, like Southern Hemisphere, and use wind it your normal clockwise. But you'd have to look that up, because I haven't done it for a while. But yeah, there is a different spin to harness the ether.
interesting.
Isn't it? So it's interesting that you picked that up, because yeah, that there is definitely a lot of truth within the way that you do spin the coil, depending on where you are located, if you prescribe to that.
Hey, I just remembered something. Remember, I shared it in one of our groups one time. I don't know, it's been so long ago now. But there are these old this old book, and the person had sketched in the book what the pyramids looked like. And this was a long time ago. This was before they had uncovered the Sphinx. The Sphinx was just a head at that time. On top of both of the pyramids was what was called copper statues. And they looked like goddesses or pharaoh, it looked like female to me. And they had like long hats, and were sitting on these thrones, and they were just facing the same direction. This was at the top of the pyramids. We all know that there's nothing on top of the pyramids, but according to this, there was, and it was removed. But that would go again back to exactly what Joshua was talking about, what you were talking, what we were been discussing, is that they were all just Tartarian technology. And so whether or not we call it Tartarian or Egyptian or whatever, it didn't belong to any of those guys. They were just using knowledge, because we also know about Thoth and these other types of individuals who came. We don't know exactly, how all that went down, but they showed up and they had animals associated with them, and they taught us things, us as a population of people. But it all had to do with harnessing energy and helping yourself, staying healthy. And at this earlier time, it was not uncommon to live 300 to 900 years. By using this harmony technology, which goes back to one more point, and then I'll be quiet because I really want to hear what you guys have to say. Is these chapels. It's the same thing. The using seismatics, you can put sand on this speaker thing and see, as the music plays, it creates different shapes, right? Well, it turns out every one of these ancient cathedrals that we thought were churches, they've just been used for churches. every one of them have like that stained glass window that has some real like symmetry, but it's also like sacred geometry kind of stuff. Just you don't really know what it is, but it's pretty. That's the same picture that it does inside. When you ring a big giant bell, the bells that were taken, most of the depictions of these bells being hauled out of here and put into these bell graveyards, they were claiming that they needed it for the war effort, but they buried them. They're uncovering them right now. They're all broken in exactly the same way. And most of them were being carried by giants. That's interesting point. But that's what these places were for. Just like the pyramids, just like these other structures. If you go into some of these ancient old architectural spaces, difficulty being that if it's a government building, they often will have like a conflicting energy. But if it's an alignment, you'll feel improvement. You will heal. And it feels, it's still there is the point, so you can drive along and you can see. And if that back in that earlier time, it would be like shopping. Oh, I need this particular frequency. I should go to the 7th Street, cathedral because that one. And then the way that they did it, these older depictions that they were laying on their backs on the floors, that wasn't meant for seating. The way that we try to put like these pews and these chairs and stuff, it just doesn't work because people would lay on the floor like a yoga mat or something, but they lay on the floor. I don't think they would lay on a yoga mat, actually. I think that it was conductive to the ground. But anyway, there's all that.
You said a lot.
It's the
Go
same.
for
The water too. They run high frequencies through water, and the water responds to it. Water molecules respond to it too. Not just there's the I forget his name, Iowa or whatever. That if you send loving thoughts to water, they're actually running frequencies through water, and you can look at it at the more microscopic level and see the water instantly responding to the frequencies.
Oh, Dr. Emoto.
Yeah, and I've seen I can't remember his name. He does this harmonic stuff with music, but he actually shows us the close up of the water as he plays the music on his keyboard and stuff like that, and it shows the. I'll have to get his name. It's escaping my mind right now, but he does this. He does it with the lights and colors and stuff like that. But he actually has close ups of the water, and as he's playing the frequencies, you can see the water responding and vibrating and shifting pattern wise to it. But say too that we all know that all the structures we've talked about, ancient and more modern, or what we consider more modern, probably ancient design, are all part of an ancient network. And the network is still going, even if the pieces have been removed from, like the copper pieces you were talking about. And the network, I think, contains the information, the knowledge that we were taught and have forgotten. And as we raise in vibration and come into vibrational frequency with that, it's like becoming in tune with that. And that's where we're getting the knowledge, and we'll regain the knowledge of how to use these ancient, like you said, they weren't earthly and whatever, but we'll regain the knowledge of how to use it. It's stored in the water. It's stored in these ancient networks that have either these structures we've been talking about have either tapped into or part of it. And as our vibration rises, but I think it was Janette that said earlier, how about our consciousness being hijacked? I think that's what is happening with the cell phones and all the distractions on Facebook and whenever people are distracted with that stuff, it hijacks their consciousness where it can be used for something else. But those of us that maintain either through meditative practices or other spiritual practices, we're just tapping into things that have been taught for thousands of years or hundreds of years or whatever to raise our vibration enough for the consciousness to be used in a different way, more consciously, no pun intended, to tap into the ancient networks and the ancient knowledge. Like you said, our bodies have, I think, a blueprint of health and stuff like that. And we can tap into all that stuff and restore ourselves without, having to do all the stuff they tell us we have to do, but more naturally through sound and light. And that's been playing throughout this conversation too, sounds and lights and all that stuff too. And I think as we're getting there, we're starting to tap more and more, not just getting information about what's going on in the world, like a news report. We're seeing beneath the surface things that were hidden in plain sight, but how we can heal, how we can grow, how we can use these so-called ancient technologies, and it all comes full circle.
Yeah.
That's a lot right there, but I'm just saying it as it comes through.
Can I add to? I'll go, Megan.
Well, I just wanted to add one more thing, but if you're not going too far off topic, I would love for you to share instead.
No, well, you go, and then I'll circle it back until Titanic.
Okay. Well, I'm just
Yeah.
jumping right into the Wi-Fi thing for a second because Wi-Fi was invented as a weapon. During time of war, it would disrupt the harmony of your frequency, and in fact has been directly linked to difficulty in processing things through the pineal gland. It's has a greater impact on us than fluoride, than aluminum or aluminium, where however you say it, combined. And so that's why around here we always turn it off when we're done with it. Like, and we need to be done with it. There's big breaks. And I bring that up because you brought up how the Wi-Fi works and stuff, and it does feel very much like it's a useful tool. But all things, even however amazing they may be, can be out of alignment when done in excess. So just remember to turn on, at the very least, click on the airplane mode on your phone before you go to bed, if you're not going to turn it off. You know, some people use it for alarms and stuff. And that's just my 2 cents. There's a lot of information regarding that, you know, and it's really good to keep that in mind. So
I think grounding also takes away a lot of EMF radiation. I saw a little video. I think it was in the grounding movie, I think it was called, or something like that. But they were doing a test. They were subjecting a person to like some electromagnetic radiation, and they could read it on a chart, and it was like kind of fluctuating. And then he immediately touches his hand to a grounding mat, and all the fluctuation on the chart
I've seen that.
just like, yeah, isn't that cool? It
Yeah.
just dropped off completely. So I think if you can, like, I have a grounding mat in bed that I sleep with usually. So I think that if you can have one of those or like get outside, that will do a lot to offset that kind of thing.
And
And
grounding mats are mostly made out of copper too, right?
well, I don't know. The one I have isn't made of copper, but it's connected. You connect it to a grounding rod. So supposedly it's supposed to be a copper rod that is in the earth somewhere. And then all the electricity is supposed to be grounded to that, like all the electricity in the house. So basically, you're connecting to a copper rod by using a grounding mat.
Right. Interesting. And I saw some examples where someone did it at home. They went and got a bunch of copper coil and they just wrapped it around their bed frame. And then remember, for those in the States, I know it's different everywhere else, but the plugs, those 2 holes on the top, you don't want to put them in there. The middle one on the bottom, that's the grounder. Just as if you're messing with electricity and you don't know what to do. So
Those Faraday cages you're talking about, Pamela? The wiring, is that the Faraday cage?
Oh no, we're talking about people it's like a homemade grounding mat, basically.
Okay.
But yeah, it works as a Faraday cage in some way, I guess. You know, it also, so what Joshua was saying was that you can also be able to, you can detect it you can measure it. You can see when you ground using these kinds of things that all of a sudden you go down to peaceful zero, you know, and then you're up to like 100% on like, you know, positively charged ions is basically what it is. You know, your body feels like the old internet dial-up sounded like. That's what the energy feels like to me.
That's why animals too are so good as well, because they'll say that you go up to a dog, and if you're feeling statically charged, you pat the dog, then the dog will go outside and lay on the grass and expel that energy from that they've taken from you. So essentially that's why they're our best friend, because there is that connection around, they do actually settle our charge. You know what I mean? So
It also
yeah.
seems cruel. Let me
It does sound cruel, it does.
just touch just shock the dog.
Well,
All right, go
it's
take
like
care of that for me, will you?
Yeah. Well, you're going to be able to give your dog that time to go out and recharge as well, because yeah, they want to be with you as much as you want to be with them. But it is a fact that the dog will take your static charge from you and expel that through them. So, but has anyone got anything else? I just wanted to talk about where that Titanic was actually made was Belfast, and I do. In the last couple of weeks, I've been wondering when Brian said the second industrial revolution, whether or not were they melting the bells down in Belfast to make a lot of these ships and stuff.
Wow, that would
And
make
he's
so
over
much
here feeling the consciousness because this is a living, like it's been something before.
Yeah.
It's yeah. Just why is that Belfast? There's a lot of obviously industrial revolution stuff that's come out of that
Right.
area as well. And yeah,
Okay.
it's just really
When was the
interesting.
invasion? When was the invasion for there's two religions, right? The two main religions in Ireland.
So
And
St. Patrick's, when did he infiltrate the
Baptist. It's
yeah,
Baptist.
yeah. So it's
And
all to do with St. Patrick's. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but he was the one that infiltrated Ireland.
who supposedly got rid of all the snakes in Ireland, but there's no archaeological evidence of snakes having ever been on the island of Ireland of any kind. So
Yeah.
that jumps down a rabbit hole about something else that we probably won't go into because
I
it's
have
like,
jumped in a bit of a rabbit hole around St. Patrick's, and it's an interesting story. And what we celebrate is nothing. Yeah, it's nothing to do with or what is celebrated on that day. The energy that's celebrated is completely counter opposite to what actually occurred.
right.
Mm. But I
Yeah.
do think about the bells in Belfast and where that connection is, and then the Titanic is a wireless telegram machine. I can't think of what the machine's called. Brian's obviously knows more about that, and they are trying to extract that, aren't they, Brian?
Yes, they're trying to take there was discussion, if they haven't done it already, of removing the Titanic's wireless, the Marconi machine that they use to transmit their distress calls and radio calls from ship to ship. There's been discussion about removing it from the ship if they haven't done it already. I believe they were just discussing it though.
I'm still looking up the date because I think this is linked.
I think it's all linked, and it's the more you look at the words that they've left, or how they've left us little breadcrumbs, or we've left ourselves little breadcrumbs to find things.
Yeah, I find that to be true with all of this. So it was the 17th and 18th centuries, so that would have fit in that same window of time. That it was the Protestants that moved in. I got that. There's a whole thing about that with my family background, and so I know a little bit about it, but it falls around the same window of time of that reset that we were all touching in on. And the bells, man, the bells is such a big deal. Like these bells have there's still some of them. Like where I lived before, we had a big giant bell in a church that would go off at 6 p.m., 6 a.m., and noon every day. But it was like a small town kind of thing that that's time to go home to eat dinner, lunchtime, things like that. I don't know why, just part of the culture. But they stopped the sound of the bell by also turning on the air raid sirens at the same time every day. Sometimes they would overlap a little bit weird, like one would start and then the other one, but they were trying to stop the sound of it. And like I noticed that everyone I mentioned it to thought I was insane. They're like, no, it just some people can't hear the bell. No one can hear it because the air raid siren on purpose, obviously. I was unfortunately right in the middle of town when it went off one day. OMG. Anyway, but these were directly linked to healing us. These bells, these singing bowls, these different sound frequencies. They're and they came in just and removed them. and it makes so much sense to me because Ireland at that time was having a lot of civil unrest. It was becoming its own country at that time. It didn't agree with the southern part, so I don't know a lot of history about it, but there's definitely obvious breadcrumbs there. And if anybody has a bell at home, like using those healing bells, like they're so awesome. They're so helpful. Like you can use bells or sound bowls instead of smokes. Like when you do like sage or Palo Santo or sweetgrass or something like that, you could clear energy in your home. Or, dude, go out in the garden and ring a bell around a little bit and watch how they grow.
I've
You know?
got wind chimes everywhere out the back, and I feel like they do that same sort of thing. I've got ones that are cathedral style, and they're really long ones, and it literally sounds like church bells. I know it's not the same metal, so it's obviously not making the same frequency, but it does give you that same sort of
Right.
patterning. It would have to, because it's just the way that it sounds. It's such a long ringing sound out of that cathedral.
Right. Right.
I need to find.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I need to find it. Just reminded me since I got back here. I need to find out what that bell in the church downtown is because we've always had this bell in the church, one of the churches downtown. It's always ringing out different times of day, but it makes you pause. Not in a bad way, but I'm kind of curious how old that bell is and what it's made of, because this whole discussion's kind of made me wonder, what kind of qualities, maybe healing qualities it has, because there's something that definitely it brings you to attention. You like makes you present, I guess, is the way because I'm kind of wondering if it is one of those older bells.
Oh yeah. I'm
Well,
sure
it's
it is.
ironic. I'm hearing both of you say that they still ring them over in the US. Ours don't ring unless there's a wedding or a funeral. They do not ring the bells here in
It's a
Australia.
small town thing around here. It's not
Not
very
even- I'm in a reasonable small town. They rang last weekend when I was in the town because it was a wedding. First time I've heard them in probably 2 years. They used to ring them on 11:11. Used to sound the bells. Don't even hear that anymore.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they
And they
actually.
give you goosebumps. They give you Sorry, Mia. Sorry, I was going to say they give you goosebumps
Leah.
when they actually ring them. Sorry, Mia. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry. You go.
I apologize. I'll just real quick and then go ahead, Leah. Now I was gonna say, because where I grew up in Alexandria, there's probably another connection to Egypt. Another rabbit hole, which we've talked about before. But yeah, and that just listening to everyone speak about them talking about the bells, and I remember watching videos about those bells and how they were gotten rid of. There was actually a church in Alexandria that would, like, by the hour ring the bells. It was like one, then two, then three. And I remember hearing that as a child. And then it kind of stopped. So, again, then they used to have those sirens like every Wednesday. It was really annoying. But yeah, I used to hear that growing up. So like I said, that they haven't been doing that for a long time.
It's very fascinating when they stop too, because it's very healing. It's super healing. Like, and if you can, I strongly encourage you to go just, even if you're going window shopping, go to a bull shop, and like get a couple of bangs out on that, there, you don't have to hit it very hard, by the way, but like, there's some really amazing ones. I've seen a lot more copper ones than anything else. Copper seems to be really common, for this as well. So I just think that's an interesting link. But also the gongs are typically copper. The gong, like the big plate that you like bong, like those are typically copper also. A lot of these types of instruments, like the copper and brass, I guess they do a lot of brass too of like wind instruments. I just find that really fascinating. How many different, and with any kind of healing. Sorry, go ahead.
was going to say maybe it's a lighter metal, and now we're so exposed to these denser metals that they don't have that same
Yeah.
resonance, harmonic. It's so you can see why we've been really dumbed down, and we don't have the ability to be able to expand the way that they used to, because the metals alone are enough to sort of make it so dense that it to expand it does take a lot of effort. And yeah, I definitely feel like there's something within that metal and
Yeah.
the way that the bell was rang, so
Yeah. And they're designed specifically for specific areas of your chakras, and the order that it's done, like lifts and assists specifically, meaning it's going to come from your heart center and move up or something. They all have this, and I can say this is that the transition from the copper to the brass instruments, like the air instruments, happened around the 20s, the 1920s, so almost 100 years ago, or about 100 years ago. And that would make a lot of sense to me because too many people are putting their mouth on that and staying healthy. I mean, honestly, that's what this all comes down to, is that the population control kind of idea that we're no longer participating in. And there's a lot of things you can do for yourself to help yourself. You can get the copper coins that are actually copper, and you put those in your water too. Like, there's other alternative means if there's difficult to access these things. What else
mhm.
those things called too? The keys, what are they called? Tuning forks. You can use the tuning forks. Those are really cool. And then just put it against, like, the areas of your body that needs it. It feels really neat.
Yeah, I used to have a massage therapist that would use them,
Yeah, those
in
are
certain
cool.
parts of your body. Yeah. Yeah, it did definitely resonate and vibrate through the body.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they do you use them in a certain way too to detect what areas of the body in the chakra system do too, by the frequency difference and whatever. You can use them, but almost like a guidance system as to where you need to go with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can find how your body flow is being stopped by using these, and magnets also, magnetic therapies. I usually wear a copper bracelet that has nine knots in it, but I was doing her hair. It's not very good to try to braid a child's hair who her hair is longer than she is tall now, and so, like, trying to braid her hair with all these knots, it doesn't work. So I leave it around, but since I started to wear that bracelet, I've noticed a marked improvement in myself. And I can tell if I've forgotten to put it back on again for a while, because I take it off for that same purpose a lot. And I notice, like, I'm like, man, I feel kind of off a little bit. And oh, I need my bracelet. And then, so it can seep through your skin is the point. You don't have to, like, there's a lot of things you can do. And copper, some people don't, it's not going to work for everybody's bodies, right? So mess around and try what works for you. We'll probably be closing up this show soon, but I figure, we're not urgently closing. Is there, you asked, does everybody want to take a turn to say something before we close, or anyone who wants to talk to take a turn? Crickets.
I speak too much, so I was letting somebody else talk.
Leah, did you want to say something? Someone had written in the comments.
No, it's all right. I forgot what I said because when you were talking, Mia, you said about Alexandra. growing up there. And then it got taken over in my head by that and going, that was a full circle for you already, like in your life. The aspect, connection, alignment, connection, that was already, yeah. So no, it got hijacked, for lack of a better term, by that. I went, okay. So no, that's all I've got to say, except for thank you very much.
Thank
Like,
you.
thank you to each and every one of you. Like, and there's people live. I keep forgetting there's people live. But thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am going to say something quickly because you made an important point that I would like to highlight for everybody watching. This is not a typical Zoom meeting. I will never air our typical Zoom meetings, just so you guys know. This was pre-planned. Everybody here knew that we were going to go live. That was the plan for today. And so when you do join our Zoom meetings, they are not broadcasted or recorded. So this is just a unique. We'll probably do more of these though on Fridays. You know, I like this. This is fun. So
I was looking up the whole thing about the water, the copper water vessels, and a lot of them are saying like 6 to 8 hours, although that might be more the scientific, like antimicrobial, but whatever. Ideally, sitting them in those vessels for that for anybody's information that might want it.
thank you.
Oh, yeah, I just want to say thank you for everybody that's joined in today, and it's been a great conversation. And obviously, we usually have these offline anyway, so it's been good to share it with the public out there and hear what everyone's got to say. And yeah, just thank you for sharing your time and energy.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to say anything? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all so much for this. This was so much fun. I do plan on doing this again for sure. If you are interested and want to jump on one of these groups, contact me. We'll have a conversation. This has been just such a treat for me. I've been looking forward to this forever. There's a lot more I realize that we didn't discuss because there's so much to these topics that we've highlighted today that, we'll probably go into this again at some point in the near future. But there's a lot to discover. Use your own discernment. I encourage everyone to do research. That the rabbit hole that you find yourself moving through is more important, it seems to me, than the actual discovery of the knowledge that's behind the other side. So I encourage anyone who's interested, if you don't know where to start, there's a whole bunch of Telegram groups. Just go into Telegram and type in Tartaria in the search. And there's a bunch of Tartaria groups on Telegram. There's a bunch of people producing content and having groups on Facebook as well. There's a lot of this social media kind of way to get started. And then once, you kind of get your mind around it, then just play. It's really cool and super exciting. And we're in the time of the Great Revelation, and more is being revealed every single day. So just hold on and enjoy the ride. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. I love you. And thank you all for who joined in on the audience. I saw you. I didn't get a chance to read all of it. Normally we don't do it through Zoom, so I didn't put your comments on here. But